Hello, my name is Timothy Froude. I'm President and Chief Executive Officer of Sokoman Minerals Corp, a Canadian-based junior explorer focused on gold and critical minerals in the province of Newfoundland, Eastern Canada. Our flagship property is a gold project, 100% owned, Moosehead project, targeting high-grade Fosterville-type gold mineralization in orogenic quartz vein type systems, and followed closely by our new partner, Benton, with a JV featuring critical minerals, including lithium, and more recently, some pretty exciting cesium values. And drilling ongoing on both of those projects as we speak. We expect to be wrapping up things around the 15th of December, give our employees and contractors time to go Christmas shopping for their wives and children, which is very important, and also a chance to catch our breath and do a year-end wrap-up.
Man, I have not bought my wife a present for Christmas. You've reminded me. I'll get onto it straight after this. Right, we saw you in September. Markets have kind of liked what you've been doing, and you've been banging out a few more press releases as well. Look, obviously, I want to talk about Moosehead, but not yet. I want to talk about Golden Hope. I want to talk about lithium, critical minerals. Canada's going nuts for lithium projects at the moment. What's happening up there?
Well, it's kind of a rebirth, I guess. A lot of these projects saw life in the 50s and 60s when I guess the initial interest in lithium first started, and again briefly I guess in the early 2000s. In fact, I was even involved with that quickly. We had a couple of projects in Northern Ontario that, if we had today, we might be a little different market cap, but at the time it was just, I think it was that first false start, if you will, with lithium, Matthew, and unfortunately that was in the past. But we've stumbled upon some pretty intense looking mineralization at Golden Hope with our joint venture partner Benton Resources, and we recently started. In fact, last week we had a spate of news. We had 3 news releases out in a week. 2 of them were on the lithium and cesium discoveries at Golden Hope. We just restarted a program there, a couple thousand meters, basically to further what we know to be an expanding and growing, I guess, target base for potentially significant zones of lithium at Golden Hope.
Absolutely. In fact, last time we spoke, I think Benton were about 12 million market cap, right? They're sort of, crikey, where were they? Sort of like 8 cents, up at 14. So they've seen a little pop there. So people are excited about lithium. They're excited about lithium in Canada as well. Can you, obviously with the press release recently, talk about a phase 3 drilling program underway. The first 3 holes are out. Okay, nice, nice spodumene product there. What's the budget there, and how much more drilling is there? I know you're going to down till shortly, but what's the total number of meters that are going to be drilled on that?
Because we're shutting down basically in about 2 weeks, we're going for about 2,000 meters, basically just shallow testing along strike from where we started the program basically last winter in what's called the western area, and or the main discovery area. We're looking at 2,000 meters, give or take, Matthew, with maybe $750,000 in total expenditures. But the camp is in place. This is just filling in basically a few weeks of time that we have, favorable, if you will, weather conditions. There's going to come a period of time, during Christmas and in early January when it's really too kind of nasty down there to be drilling. So we want to get this work in and get a bit of a jump start on next year, where we expect to be putting out contracts for hopefully 20,000 plus meters to further this project in a more robust way. Time is ticking by, and as you mentioned in our start there, lots of projects showing up in Canada. And we want to be one that's on the radar screen, not one that's still too early and not really one that anyone is paying attention to. We feel with 20,000 meters worth of drilling in 2023, we'll be very close to putting something, a number on the board, maybe even as quickly as a year's time.
Well, the other kind of point that people are jumping on with regards to what's going on there is obviously the cesium component. Is it kind of a byproduct, or is it something they're actively, you and Benton are actually chasing as well?
Well, if you look at the at the general geological model for lithium, cesium, tantalum dikes. They're called the LCT type. And it's because those three commodities generally hang out in this brand of pegmatite kind of closely. And they are zoned. So the closer you are to your parent granite, you'll get more beryllium. And then you start moving outwards, and then you start seeing the lithium creep in. And the furthest out, the most highly evolved of the dike swarms will have the cesium in it. And here we are, 12 kilometers from Kraken, and that's about the scale that most, scholars, if you want to call them, or experts in these types of systems, sort of deem the spectrum of how far out you need to be and where you expect to see certain commodities within that spectrum. So the cesium, or hydra, as we now call it, which is another legendary beast, of course, with kind of in line with the Kraken. We're kind of keeping that thing going, but it's about where you would expect it to be in the model. So it's not surprising, I guess, that we're finding it. But these things are indeed rare. Matthew, as you know, as most people as we all know now, I guess we're all learning about these metals. Never thought I'd ever talk about pollucite since university days, but here we go. And but yeah, it's kind of fitting where it is, it's just part of the package. But cesium will not be the mainstay. It will be, lithium is still the main focus of Golden Hope. In fact, even with the cesium mineralization, if you read through the entire assay suite, we're still getting really respectable grades, up to 0.5%, 0.4% Li2O with the cesium values, with enriched tantalum. But again, primarily Golden Hope is a lithium target.
Yeah, I think, and just given the kind of fervour and the types of conversations which are going on with your shareholders and others with regards to cesium, we've done some studies on it, maybe not for like 6-7 months, but can you explain why lithium is the thing to focus on and not cesium in the context of the size of the cesium market? I know it's worth a lot, but why you are not chasing that?
Well, because it's such a small market, I guess. And, there's a lot of uncertainty. In particular, the Canadian government has now, in fact, forced several deals that were done between Canadian juniors and Chinese-based companies. Tear up your agreements. We don't want this product leaving the country. And but again, it is a small market, and clearly, the lithium market is the big whopper here, if you want to use a term. Actually, it's the name of a project in Northern Ontario. But yeah, clearly it's the lithium, the bigger market, much bigger market. But you know what? I kind of like the fact that cesium is on the critical minerals list as well. And the U.S. is obviously a large consumer of these products. They always will be. We don't need the Chinese, I don't think, to have a market down the road. But be mindful that, of course, that it is a small market and that it won't be the focus of our exploration. But it would be a very nice value added sort of thing. If it can pay for all the nuts and bolts of an operation down the road, it's worth chasing for sure.
Right. Okay. It's early days, so strategies change and you are agile and you react. But it just want to stick with your JV partner, 50/50 JV partner, Benton Resources. Obviously, they're still only a $20 million company. Obviously, still money is tight out there. Going for lithium versus gold, I think you're going to get a bit more of a listening to. So have you any idea of what their intent is next year, given you're 50/50 with them, with regards to raising capital and the focus for them? Because there's also Grey River and Kepenkeck in the background as well, isn't there?
Yeah, well, I think it will be a very important project for them. Clearly, and I want Sokoman, sorry?
The Golden Hope specifically is very important for them.
Yes, exactly. And
okay.
we're Steve and I talk pretty much on a daily basis. Steve Stairs and I talk on a daily basis about moving this thing forward. And really, the topic of 20,000 meters, is a number that we've sort of agreed on as what's required basically to get this project to the next level. And I think it will be their flagship property, although I can't speak for the company itself, but I mean, they have a lot of other projects. They're kind of the project generator type of company. Slightly different focus than us. We're more of a discovery type of thing. They're more of a find them and farm them out sort of thing, kind of like an Altius Minerals sort of story, which is a very successful story, by the way. But I think, given the nature of the market for lithium and byproduct metals, other critical minerals, I think this is one that. And I'm a director of Benton, but certainly I'm not senior management. But I do think, and I hope that Golden Hope will be a very important project for them moving forward. We like the relationship we have with them, and we've been working great together. I think we connect together, and I think for them, Golden Hope will be a very important project moving forward.
So what happens in a situation like that, where you're kind of, you like to make discoveries and they're project generators, and it's a 50-50 JV. If they do want to spin that out, flip that out, what does that mean for your portion, and what say do you have with regards to how they treat that?
Well, I think we're both. In fact, we have talked about it to some degree in snippets here and there. We haven't announced anything formal. I think the cesium discovery kind of changed maybe the timeline for spinning this thing out, because it's still a very large project, Matthew, and we've really only explored perhaps 25% of it. And so I think my initial ideas were, okay, I don't want to confuse our shareholders and thinking we're an ambulance chaser and this sort of thing, and we need to focus, and we still are a gold-focused company. And maybe my comments to some people earlier about, we're going to spin this out, in the next 6 months or 8 months, may have been me just trying to, I guess, appease some people's fears that we're not going to remain a gold company. But I think as we move this thing forward, I think more value will be added. So I think waiting a little longer, spending another couple $1 million will bring in many times the perceived value, at least the value as it certainly is right now, to our shareholders. And that instead of spinning out a company, I'm just throwing out numbers. For example, a property worth $20 million. We could in 6 or 8 months have a property that's worth $100 million. So I think it's worth it to our shareholders to hang on and do this couple $1 million worth of work next year, and let's just flesh this thing out.
Yeah, look, there's nothing wrong with waiting to see how the market plays out, because obviously lithium's getting a bigger hearing than gold at the moment. I'm not sure gold's going to get it. Well, it certainly hasn't had its fair share of listening in 2022. We have, as I mentioned earlier, sort of seen a few new Canadian lithium stories, and they have got all sorts of ideas about how they fund this. And and I think a little bit of you earlier in the year talking about spinning stuff out was a question of, how do I manage my balance sheet and not dilute shareholders? And that's certainly an option that was available to you in terms of spin out. But something I just being thrown on the table now with lithium producers, like, well, I tell you what, it's shallow. So we think we can dig some of this. I'm keeping this simple. We can dig some of this out and have some of the ore processed locally, and then take some revenue from that to advance our exploration component. So there's lots of ways to come at this. But are you very clear in your head about as far as you go? You talk about the option of maybe hanging on for a little bit longer, but you're very clear in your head at the moment about, we are a discovery company, and then that's how we monetize. You're not looking to try and drive any revenue through, processing ore through a local processing mill.
No, that's one thing we're not, as a mining company per se. We're an exploration company, and we're just going to do our job as best we can, basically explore the projects to the best of our ability and capabilities and financial means, and let's see what happens. I mean, can we be taken over if we, suddenly halfway through our program in 2023, it's becoming obvious that we've got something that's quite considerable. Another thing is too, I mean, lithium is an industrial mineral, and it's not something that, like a gold deposit, where you can fly your product out in a helicopter or have a Brinks truck come up to the back door. These are basically earth-moving operations, and I think our advantage, where Kraken sits, We're 30 kilometers from the biggest highway in the world, the North Atlantic Ocean. You put that stuff in a boat, whatever it is, whoever develops it, not us. But I think people look at all aspects of a project, and I think one of the things that clearly Kraken has, even though it is very early, yes, clearly, forward-looking statement, but people do look at infrastructure in terms of, is this a project that they even want to be interested in? Like, if you're a major in this business, I mean, are you going to look at a project that needs a 500-kilometer railway or road built, or a 30-kilometer side rail to a deep water port that's just waiting for business? So that sort of thing. No, we're not miners. Whatever happens, happens. If we form a partnership along the way, it would have to be obviously for the benefit of both companies' shareholders. And the future is out there. But I really do believe that Golden Hope is a quality project that a lot of people will be looking at in the months to come.
Okay, and just finish off on that one. So Grey River and Kepenkeck, not so much attention next year, but nothing either. There will be some.
I think Kepenkeck will probably get, because Kepenkeck kind of got orphaned a little bit. I'll admit that we haven't been as, I guess, robust with our exploration activities. And that's the advantage of these projects, where a lot of it was done through staking. So there's not a lot of costs that are just hitting us in the face, option payments or things like that. They're very cheap to hold on to. And the tenure of land here in Newfoundland is that project at this stage are very easily managed in terms of their upfront costs. So, Fleur-de-Lis, that's another 100% ours. But if we're just sticking to the joint venture stuff with Benton, I think clearly Golden Hope is the flagship of our three joint venture projects. Grey River, we've drilled. We're about to put out some, a final statement on our work this year on that one. Kepenkeck, like I said, just never got the attention. I still like the project. It's sitting on one of the big structures in Newfoundland, and on trend from CanStar's Golden Bay project, where they've been putting out some good numbers. And again, undervalued company as well, one of Sprott's biggest holdings. And I like where the project is. We just haven't gotten around to giving it that extra effort yet. And 2023 will have to be the year for that, because if not, we might have to give the project back if we don't advance it quick enough for the owners. But that's in our hands. We can control that.
Let's kind of move on from Benton Resources to two projects which you have option to TransCanada Gold and also Cantera Minerals, which is Crippleback Lake and East Alder. And I'm going to move towards the money conversation in a minute, but let's talk about what they're doing, or what your expectations, what they're going to be doing with those options in 2023.
Well, actually, an update on Crippleback. We've been given the project back. TransCanada have decided to focus on their Ontario assets, which are a little more advanced in terms of the level the project is at. So we now have that one back. We're going to be basically dusting that one off and shopping it around, most likely in Vancouver at the show in Vancouver in January. It's a great project, great location. It's sitting on that key structure, the Valentine Lake Shear Zone, which our Moosehead project sits on. It's kind of in the middle of those two, as does the other one you mentioned, East Alder, under Cantera's leadership right now. Because it's a small block, it's critical. It's kind of like, how do I describe it? It's kind of like an annoying little fly that's sitting on the wall that you're looking at it all the time. It's not huge, but it's there, and it could be a problem for you down the road if you find something next door. And it's very close to some of their key mineralized zones. I don't think that it's obviously something they're going to want to spend a lot of money on right now. I think they're advancing it quickly enough for my liking. I think they're probably at the stage where there's drill targets defined. I think they're focusing now more on their base metal project in Central, the Le Marchand project, I believe it is. It's a VMS type thing. Great potential there as well. But again, it's a small block of ground, and it wasn't doing us any good. if they make another share payment in the spring, I'll be happy to see that, and hopefully wish them success, and you know how that story goes. So that's it for those two. That leaves then our Moosehead, of course, and Fleur de Lis.
And Fleur de Lis. Yeah. So where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with Fleur de Lis, because I think we'll end it with Moosehead, because Moosehead is a very exciting story right now, and let's leave maybe the best for last.
Okay, so Fleur de Lis, have you got any results from there?
Yeah, I'm working on a press release now, hopefully to get it out in the next week or 10 days or so. Last week was a very busy week getting all the other stuff out of the way, but we've now received all till results back. We're now down to focusing in on targeting specific areas for follow-up in 2023. We don't have a budget for it for the remainder of this year. We basically spent the $500,000 that we said we were going to spend, and met all of our goals, basically. That was completing phase one and some follow-up on the tills. We've done some prospecting. We have located gold in bedrock now, which previously wasn't identified. I think we're going to have some pretty fine drill targets. Now, how do I fit that into the big picture with all of our other budgets? I'll have to think about that over Christmas, but I think the best, obviously, is yet to come for Fleur de Lis. Clearly, the target is very desirable. The 6 million ounce gold deposit in Northern Ireland, sitting in geologically equivalent rocks. Now they're having some local issues over there, which really does no bearing on potential or anything for our property. It's a local issue. It's not in my backyard, sort of thing. But anyway.
But Northern Ireland's very well known for having local issues. It's where I was brought up. Don't worry about that. And I'm not talking about mining. Right. Okay. So Fleur de Lis has got something about it. But again, before we kind of talk about Moosehead, you've told us what you are. You make discoveries. You move things on. It's what you do, right? In the same way that Benton are project finders. How do you manage this portfolio? Because Cripple Lake obviously hasn't kind of worked out. You've got that back. East Alder, you hope that kind of gets motoring here. And you've been doing all of this in a very difficult marketplace. I'm not sure if you took advantage of getting any flow through money, whether you needed to or not. But how do you finance next year? How do you finance all the drilling that you're going to need to do, and so you can get to the point where you can make some decisions about which projects have value today and which projects you will hold on to for a little bit longer? I'm just intrigued that thinking for a company which has your business model.
Well, I think that was obviously one of the benefits of having a partnership with Benton is that it's share the risk, share the reward, and as well share half the costs. So for 50 cent dollars, basically, we're advancing now what is arguably, one of Newfoundland, certainly, and I wouldn't dare get as bold as to say Canada's new exploration projects. But so we manage costs in that sense. Fleur de Lis is one of those properties, I think, that down the road could be a spin out sort of thing. So we kind of look after that in that sort of fashion, that we build up enough critical mass, I think, in the potential and the data that we have to farm it out as not farm it out, but spin it out as a separate entity. That would sort of take the burden of financing off of Sokoman directly and put it into a tighter ship, a clean slate, if you will, and move forward from there. Clearly, Moosehead is our flagship property, and will be the meat and bones, the framework for Sokoman moving forward. And obviously, we've got about $10 or $12 million in warrants sitting out there at about 40 cents, which are within reach. I think some good exploration successes at Moosehead, which hopefully are not that far down the road. We've got a very exciting situation going on there now, which I'll get into, as well as further market reward from our efforts at Golden Hope. To get the stock price up and see that 10 million in or 10 or 12 million of warrants come through, as well as we are looking at doing some flow through funds right now. We are looking at a raise in the $3 to $5 million sort of range, because our current treasury, which sits at about $4.5 million, are 100% hard dollar. So if we're just going to burn dollars in drill bits, it's plus you get a premium, for those flow through shares. So I've always kind of made it a personal sort of goal to every financing you do it a little higher, but sometimes the markets just aren't there with you to keep that streak sort of going. So what this financing is at, if it's close to what their last one was, which I think was about 40 cents, I'd be very happy with that. But clearly, the markets are the reality of today, and it is what it is.
It is what it is, and it is what you do with it next year that we want to hear. Okay, so you can spend money to make money, and that's what we're interested in. Let's talk about Moosehead. Okay, because flagship for sure, but people have been very, very excited about it. What's going on there?
Well, not that long ago, in September, I believe it was, we announced a very exciting drill hole. Not just in terms of grade or thickness, but where it is and what it could represent in terms of a new sort of style of or structural, what's the word I'm looking for? Domain, I guess within Moosehead. Most gold mines in the world have their average grade, and then they've got their little jewelry boxes here and there, sort of saying that when grades are low and the market and the price of gold is down, they can go in and let's muck away at this face for a few days and get a few tons of high grade and get the grade up a little bit just to make the balance sheet look a little better. Hole 463 returned our thickest intersection. I think it was 39.6 meters of about 12.5 grams, within which there was a higher grade section of 10 meters of about 42 grams. We typically don't see mineralized structures in Moosehead that are 39 meters thick. So there's something going on there. So either we're looking at a fold or either two structures coming together. So we were very relieved that once the Canadian government relaxed the restrictions for travelers coming to Canada with COVID and stuff, that we were able to get Dr. Dave Collar back after a 3-year absence.
I remember this conversation last time. We talked about these two zones coming together. Is he from Ireland?
Yes, he is. Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. So he came over.
Yep, and basically he was the guy who we had after phase one. We had him over because he had some familiarity with the project through Altius, the owner of the project, and we knew we were in a structurally complex setting. So let's get a structural expert over here. And basically, some of the models that he, including predictive models, not just looking at what we know, but looking at what we could have, it was stunning to see 2 years later models that he had drafted up with various scenarios of how this is folded over and the shearing and how this locks into here, that we were hitting mineralization where he and of the type that he predicted. So we were very glad to get him back over to, at the same time, of course, that 463 came out of the ground. So we had a good look at that, and he was over for a week, and basically left with us with some very good positive feelings about what it means. The zone is something new. It represents a different structural style. In fact, the hole that's currently on its way as we speak, we're now just past 200 meters down the hole. We're expecting to target somewhere between 350 and 375. So about 2 days more further out, we'll be right around that area, testing it from the direction that it needs to be tested from, which is the old way we were drilling, which is down the dip sort of the main eastern trend. Say the eastern trend is coming through like this. You see my hand like that? This new zone is coming through like that. So and all of our drilling for the last 2 years have been coming at this zone in this direction the way you're supposed to be drilling it, right? You're supposed to be drilling things through the zone, not along it or down dip or whatever. But because this zone is like this here, we need it now to come back and start re-drilling it from the old way. So we are expecting to see some snippets of the eastern trend, because that's where the hole had to be collared from. We do expect to see some snippets of that style of mineralization, and but the real prize, as far as I guess our anxiously awaiting shareholders, is where is and how big, how significant was hole 463? Is it a zone? Is it just a one-off, just a little blowout? We will know a lot more in a couple of days, unless, of course, the hole deviates off and goes off and misses, because we're not talking large areas here. I mean, we're only talking areas that are 50 to 75 meters in strike length, which, by the way, is kind of the same strike length of the Swan Zone at Fosterville. It was the down plunge thing, and that's what's wide open at Moosehead right now. It's the down plunge. There's no drilling down there below this. So
we should probably have a slightly more technical conversation separately. But what sort of depths are we talking about in terms of how long will these drill? How deep will you be drilling? I should say.
Well, we're looking at hitting the top of this zone, Matthew, at about 350 to 375 meters down the hole. Mm-hmm. And again, below that, we don't know, but we need to find out how this thing is sitting in the shallower parts before we really start stabbing at something that we're not quite sure where it is at deeper levels. So we need to basically, again, build outwards from 463 until we get more of a handle on, and if indeed, how this zone is sitting, because it can still have different orientations. We know it's dipping kind of this way, but is it plunging this way or is it plunging that way, which is still in the same plane? You can still miss this thing. And it may take a couple of holes. And I want to prepare people for that this first hole.
So yeah, because it's at reasonable depth, and so it's kind of shorter intervals, but you could have a sense of roughly where you want to be. But just on cost, because you're raising a bit of flow through money, you take advantage of the time of year to do that. You've got a treasury of say 4.5 million at the moment. So money wise for next year. Well, I guess you've got some options at the speed at which you drill, but give me a sense so I can go away and do some napkin, numbers on the back of a napkin, which is the drilling cost per meter is what where you are.
Well, it's certainly gone up. Thanks to the price.
Everyone's saying the same thing.
Yeah. I'm looking at tacking on probably 30 to 35% on top of what we were using for an all-in sort of number for Moosehead, which now probably puts Moosehead at $200 a meter, all in, and that's we
including assays.
Maybe it depends. Our assay costs are highly variable, and when I mean that is that we send all our cores in. And if any of them come back greater than a gram, they go back in the mix again. This is why people are kind of confused as to why sometimes it seems like it's taking an awfully long time to get results back when, rumors on the internet are that Eastern now has a 2 to 3 week turnaround. Well, yeah, that's for regular assays, right? That's for regular assays. What's a regular assay? Just describe a regular assay for me.
Well, basically, it's a 30-gram fire assay, and the results are what they are. And most people are satisfied with that number. But because we're in a nuggety gold system, any assay that we get greater than a gram has the potential to have a heck of a lot more gold in it. So all of our samples that come back greater than 1 gram per ton automatically get put into queue again for what's called metallic screen assaying. And basically what happens then is the entire sample gets pulverized and screened, and any metallics get put off to one side and the fines get put on the other side. Then they do 2 more assays based on that. They do an assay of the coarse fraction and they do an assay of the fine fraction. And then what happens, your final assay is a blended number of
Interesting.
of the two. Basically, it's a weighted average.
Okay. So on the drilling side of things, then, without assays, you're saying it's sub 200 million? Is that where we're 200 bucks per meter? Is that what you're going with?
Yeah, give or take, a couple dollars.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there, depending on how far you get down and what's happening, if the price of fuel seems to be coming off a bit, which is a blessed relief. Okay, and then the assay bit, so depending on what type of core you're getting or what you're seeing, it would be, well, it sounds like quite a big range of cost on top of that.
Yeah, because just a regular fire assay is about $35 Canadian, and depending on the size of the actual sample, when that goes, if you do a metallics on that, it can triple or quadruple the cost because of the extra labor that's involved. Plus, you're doing 2 assays instead of just 1. So that's the added time, and depending on how many samples are being done, if we're not the only one doing metallics, we can't expect to be first in line all the time. I know we're a good customer or client of Eastern, but we're not their only one. So
that's really interesting. That's really interesting because it just allows us to understand when you talk about meters, we can get a sense of what the burn rate is, because you guys report when you need to. So you're feeling okay. So you're feeling okay about money, and you feel you can raise money by the sounds of it as well. Yeah. Okay.
We're looking at probably a $5 to $6 million program for Golden Hope for next year. That's jointly funded, so that's $2.5 to $3 million each for us in Benton. I think obviously we've got to start moving Fleur de Lis up to the next level. So I'm thinking a larger budget for next year. It could include some drilling, depending on how things time out. So $1 million there. And I'm looking at, we're probably close to 80,000 meters now through our 100,000 meter program, Matthew. But that's just a number. We're not stopping at 100,000 meters and the job is done. We're going to keep going. So we're on then to the next 100,000 meters. And obviously we're not going to raise money for a 100,000 meter program all at once. We're basically going to move. We're going to move the thing along. I'm looking at maybe, a $5 million to $6 million budget alone for Moosehead. So we're looking at total commitments next year, 10 to 12 million for Sokoman.
Okay. Well, I guess because again, one of the questions sent in, and by the way, some amazing questions sent in by some of your shareholders, some pretty smart questions indeed. One is, I think you've just answered it. It's like, what happens after the 100,000 drill program is finished? Well, there's another 100,000 drill program.
Yeah, we can't stop.
It's not a question of.
Yeah,
it's not a question of moving to a 43101 or economic studies. That's not the type of company you are.
No, not yet. It's way too early. And I don't think we need one yet. Why put one out when, if you're going to drill another 100,000 meters, it's only going to be at a date as soon as you publish it. People say, well, when are you going to do one? I said, I guess when we stop hitting mineralisation, I suppose, because then we know we've come to the end, and now it's time to see what we got. Newfoundland, they're 280,000 meters into their program now. No 43101 coming from that side of the hill yet. So, and
trying to do a great bear. Seem to work there.
And here we are with 100,000 meters in total ourselves. So when is the right time for us to do it? Like I said, when we stop getting gold. And I don't want that to happen. That doesn't mean we'll never do one, but you know what I'm saying? We're still only down really to 300 meters.
Well, it's like kind of the Great Bear model is like, we'll create the data and whoever's going to come and buy this thing will then come in and do their own modeling. Don't need you to do that for them. Yeah. And we'll see where Newfoundland Gold end up in terms of their strategy. So that's all good. Well, look, Tim, we better call it a day there. You've got stuff to get on with. I've taken up enough of your time.
No,
lovely
not
to
at all.
see you.
I enjoy our chat.
Lovely to see you.
You really get to the crux of the matter, so to speak.
Hey. I'll send you that $1 bill later.
Okay. No, you might need it to patch up that leak you got there.
You can't be telling people I've got a leaky house. I do.
I do too. So that makes two of us.
Similar problems. Look, Tim, I'm going to leave you. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate the update. We'll see you in the new year.
Anytime, Matthew. Love it. Thank you very much.